Hi, guys. I'm Bart Robley with the Drummers Education Network. I'm here with three of the greatest human beings on the face of the planet, Chip Ritter, Jeremy Steinkohler, and Rick Stojak. What's happening, guys? How the heck are you?
Good, man. How's it going, Bart?
Hey,
Really
Bart.
good.
Hey, fellas.
Hey, everybody. It's great to be here. Welcome to the den.
Yes, welcome to the den. So we have set today's meeting up with just the four of us. We're not interviewing anybody today. And obviously, one of the things that we're super passionate about is teaching drums and passing on the knowledge that we have about this extremely historic instrument. Even though it's not the oldest instrument, it's very historic, and passing on the information that we have about it. And what we're trying to do is we're building this community of drum teachers to help each other. That's what this is all about. And so today's topic is, how do we get students to practice? I think as drum teachers, it's sometimes that's like one of the most frustrating things in the world is, how do you get somebody to go home and practice? And what are some of the tools that the four of us have? And so usually when I kick this over to somebody, I always go to Chip first. But Chip, no offense, I'm not going to you first. I'm going down to San Diego to my buddy Rick Stojak. Rick,
hey, down in San Diego.
You're in the hot seat, brother. What's happening in San Diego? Right. How do you get your students to practice, buddy?
You know, my teaching system is in my method book system, How to Build a Drum Groove. And it's more about groove. I really focus on getting them to just play a basic beat and learn to read a beat. And then in my book, I'll pair it with hit songs that use that beat from start to finish. So it's kind of like using a song like a metronome. So they'll learn boom, bop, boom, bop. They could play Billie Jean. And then I have 20 songs that use that beat from start to finish. Then I make, one little change, boom, bop, boom, boom, bop. Find a bunch of songs that use that. And so I think it's very groove oriented, and it gets them playing right from the get-go. And I've had really, really good luck motivating them. And then I'll have all the songs up on YouTube, a playlist on YouTube, and then I'll play it right on a television connected to my iPad. So they're getting kind of like a virtual reality experience and having fun, and they get results that way. And then I pepper in all of the technique and the rudiments and work that in. So
when you say you have the song list on YouTube, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. When you say you have the song list on YouTube, are you talking that you have like just a song, like the video to that song, the official video, I guess you would say, to that song, or do you have a video of you playing it like a drum cover? What are you talking about there? How do you do that?
Yeah, no, I actually have the video of the song.
Okay.
And then I might have different videos of the song. Like I'll have the given song, here's the band's official video, and then I might put in, if I can find it, a live version of it. So and then a karaoke version of it too, so a student can focus on how their part might interact with the lyrics. And so I like to mix it up. So the interesting thing that they'll find is that one beat might fit into 3 or 4 different types of songs that you wouldn't expect. Hey, that beat goes with Red Hot Chili Peppers and Sting and Usher. What? And so, and all the system also helps them with understanding tempo. So they understand something like, hey, what's 110 beats a minute feel like? So that's yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep talking over you. you're springing forth more questions about your practice to me, because you said you pepper in the rudiments and technique.
Yep.
So if we're talking groove, then you got to be talking groove time and feel, because you mentioned time, right? So you feel 110 beats a minute. Does that kind of spring forth like where like you talk about, okay, this really is, I feel 110 beats a minute, and then put a rudiment into that song if it's applicable, or how do you pepper those things in, and how do you create the time within that?
I'll tend to have them start improvising basic fills, if just boom, bop, boom, 4/16 notes, or 3 enda, 4 enda, 2 beats of 16th notes, and then let's make the fill a paradiddle. So I'll work it in that way.
Very cool.
So it's
Sneaking
fun.
in-
Bottom line is I gotta have fun.
You're trying to sneak in some vegetables with the dessert.
Exactly. What about you, Jeremy? How do you get them to practice?
Well, I always ask every student that comes in for a first lesson, why they want to play the drums. What was it about the drums that drew them to the instrument? And I try to keep that in mind as we work together, because for me, the thing that keeps people practicing is that it's fun. As soon as it becomes not fun, they're not practicing anymore. Now, that's not to say that we go with whatever they want to do, and if all they want to do is learn, Led Zeppelin songs, that's all we play. Because I have a program and a curriculum and a methodology that I have to show them, that I think is going to help them make them a more complete drummer, more capable drummer, to be able to do all the things they want to do. I am here to help. That's my job as a teacher, but especially with the kids too, I find that my job is also motivator. I've got to motivate them to want to practice and to want it, right? So, one of the things I find most effective in helping them stay on track is having goals, specific goals, as opposed to I'm just going through the books and I'm, doing my exercises every week. For some kids who are self-disciplined and self-motivated, that's great. You never have to throw them any kind of bones, but having things specific to work forward to, tempos to reach, being able to get through a certain piece with, fewer than X number of mistakes or something. And then I also find that people struggle often with, just not having the time, right? That's the most common complaint I hear from my students. Oh, I got really busy this week. And I always remind them that, you've got to make practicing a priority. You've got to have it scheduled in your plan. Otherwise, if you just think you'll get to it when you have the time, it's probably not going to happen. Mm-hmm. So, for the kids that are really stuck, I remind them that it's like, if you're stuck, it's easy to stay stuck. It's kind of like working out. I don't know if you guys work out, but like when you're working out a lot, it feels good. You look forward to it. It gives you endorphin rush, and you want to keep going. And then you feel like you need to work out. Clearly, we got some swole guys here. And if you're not practicing, it's kind of the same, because you're stuck there and you come to your lesson and oh, Jeremy's going to give me this speech about practicing again. And, you don't look forward to it because you're embarrassed. You haven't prepared.
Nobody likes that.
Yeah.
Right. Nobody. It just makes you feel worse. Right. So it's kind of like a spiral. Yeah. You stay stuck in the place of not practicing because you feel bad and overwhelmed with all the stuff you have to do. Or you can get on the positive spiral where you're working at it. You're excited to come and show me what you've worked on and how much you've improved. And so, for those people that are stuck, I just say, hey, look, let's start with one time. I want you to practice one time this week for an hour. Maybe it's 3 times. And then when they come in, they've got that to show. They put it in the bank and say, okay, look what happened. Look how much better you got at this one thing or these 2 things from the time you spent. Just imagine how good you could be if you started working on this more consistently. And just giving them that little small piece of positive feedback that's like, oh yeah, wow, this is really cool. This makes me feel good about myself. Right? You want drumming and drum lessons and practicing to be something that makes them feel good about themselves, and not something that makes them feel bad about themselves. So then we just build on that.
I have a question. I have a question. Jeremy, do you ever share with your students, like you said, the time thing? Because that's the complaint we all hear. Do you ever show your students, hey, look, this is where I practice. This is, my practice time. Do you ever do that with them?
Sometimes, yeah. I'll tell them how, if I had a good week or a bad week. But another thing that I do that's kind of similar is I give them their own. I have a document that's like a practice log, and it's got every day like check boxes, and for each day there's a list, and you can fill in the list with whatever you want, with all the 4 different things you're working on. Your rudiments, your song, your repertoire, your reading, your fills, whatever. And then on each day you check off whether you got to the thing, and that somehow makes them feel like they're accountable. And they've got to show that to me. It's like, ooh, if I got to show that, that's going to be really embarrassing if it's all empty. So I don't use it with everybody, but sometimes I find it effective.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Chip.
you have to know when to do that. You have to know when to do that, because sometimes someone is like, I didn't get to it this week. I think I'm not going to come into the lesson.
Yeah,
Oh,
you don't be the heavy. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
always tell people, I say, look, even if you didn't practice, you've got to come to your lesson. Like you're committed
Yeah.
to being here and you're being accountable. And if you didn't practice, that's totally okay. It's going to happen. There's certainly weeks when I don't get to practice, right?
Yeah.
So there's plenty of stuff for us to work on, you know? And
Yes.
just one last thing, I think the most important piece about practicing is feeling like you're making progress. You know, if you practice a lot, you put in a lot of time and effort, and you don't feel like you're getting better, you don't see the results of that, who's going to want to keep working, right? So
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like, you know, my job is to not just to show them what to do, but to show them how to practice so that they get the most bang for their buck with the time they spend. You know, and that all has to do with going slow and staying below a certain threshold with tempo so that they're playing stuff accurately and they can repeat it accurately. Quality reps and lots of them.
That's great. Okay,
That
Chip,
sounds good.
Yeah, man.
you're up.
How do I get my students to practice, man? Everything Jeremy and Rick just said, everything Jeremy said about, I literally wrote down goals. I wrote down specific goals, asking the students when they come into lessons for the first time, why are you here? What would you like to get out of this experience? And listening to them and paying attention to what they say. Trying to get, one of the benefits of being a member of DEN, Drummers Education Network, is that it's opened my mind to all possibilities of teaching. And I've taken every meeting we've ever had together and I've benefited in some way in it and infused that to my teaching. Like, for example, getting Rick's book, How to Build a Drum Groove. I've used that, I've incorporated that to my curriculum. And things like that. I'm always looking for ROI, return on investment. How much time do we have and how much can we get in there? And my drum lessons, maybe because I'm selfish and self-centered, I've got goals in my mind that I have for each of these students as well. They've got their
I like
goals, I've got my goals, and I kind of try to play them off of each other. When a
Yep.
student's not practicing, it's super frustrating. And one of the other things I would think, if you just walked up on the street to me and said, "Hey Chip, how do you get your students to practice?" My answer would be, I don't. I can't. Not my job. Talk to mom, talk to dad. And that reminds me, is one of the things that I do is if they're not practicing and we're not making progress, ethically, I feel it's my obligation to talk to the parents and sit them down and say, "Hey guys, this isn't really working. Can you help me? Because here's what I would like for your son or your daughter." And that's one of the things I found that really opens up some insight. I had a student, a difficult student who was really struggling in my lessons. And after having a talk with their parents about practice, they came back to me and started to explain that even at his advanced age, he's still learning how to read English. And he's got a learning disability that I was unaware of before we even had that talk. So I don't think there's one fast rule for it, but I do think that it has something to do with goals, setting down goals like a specific everything Jeremy said. Right now I've got some student notes from yesterday, and my student Jackson he's doing Wild Side for Motley Crue. He's doing Limelight. He's doing Red Hot for Motley Crue. He's got Red Barchetta. And these big goals that we're working towards that are shiny enough to keep him going and that are working. And to finish up with this, I also recommend when my students are brand new to practice itself, that they do a practice sandwich, that they open up a little bit with some fun songs and warming up and jamming out with no expectations. And they do that for about 10 minutes. And then for 10 minutes, we work. We work on the practice. We work on the specifics, the paradiddles, the vegetables, the meat and the potatoes of the drumming. And then for that final 10 minutes, they get to freestyle and do whatever they want and just jam out, which they probably would have done anyway. But it's kind of a structured sandwich of practice for the younger kids in the beginning. That's how I get them to practice.
Can I jump in? And then
Sure.
Bart, I'm going to ask you a question. Chip, really great stuff. Everything you said resonates with me.
Yeah.
And it made me think of one other thing, which I think is really important, at least for me it is in my teaching practice, recognizing that different, as far as setting goals, they're different for different students. Now that may
Yes.
sound obvious, but
I
think
agree
there are a lot
100%.
of I think there are a lot of teachers out there who have their way, and you got to do their way. It's their way or the highway. and everyone's got to meet the same benchmarks and whatnot, to become the drummer that the teacher wants them to be, or shape them in the mold of themselves.
Which can provide a lot of results. That can make results.
And for some people, that's fantastic. But for other people, they're gonna crash and burn with that method, because I think as a teacher, you have a responsibility to understand, and get to know each of your students, how they learn, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and what they're capable of, right?
Yep.
And it's your job to keep them challenged, but also succeeding. You got to keep them challenged and succeeding. And they succeed, then you challenge them again. They succeed, and you challenge them again, then you grow. But if you set the bar too high, or the expectation too high, and then they're incapable of meeting it, that's just a recipe for them getting frustrated. So, it might be that I have two students, same age, same background, whatever, and one of them comes to the table with a whole lot of skills, even if he's never taken drums before. It just makes sense to him. And another kid comes in and maybe he's got some more challenges, and reading's an issue or whatever, timing, he just doesn't feel it. Well, those kids can work the same amount and end up with completely wildly different results in one week. So if you set your expectations appropriately, that could, an incremental increase in speed or control could be a huge achievement for this one kid.
Realistic expectations.
For the other kid,
Yeah.
right. Well, for the other kid, that could be, he could do that in his sleep. So you got to challenge him harder. You got to know how hard to push, I guess is what I'm saying. Where to set the goals.
I agree with that 100%.
Totally. You
we
very
have to
well
be flexible.
said. Yeah.
Yep.
Very well said.
Adaptable, right.
Right on.
Bart, how about you?
I think that's also giving me some ideas too. I really appreciate that. And when I said shiny goals, I meant shiny as far as, Jeremy said, you sit down and you talk about why are you taking lessons in the first place. That is so critical and such an efficient way of teaching, because right off the bat, when my first drum teacher, Fred Hayes, I came to him. He's like, what are you doing playing drums? Where do you want to go? And I said, I want to be a sick drum ninja like you. I want to be Mr. Jazz. Because I saw him play with a big band, a 19-piece big band at the college, and he was just smoking, and I was like, I want to be like you. And he goes, well, if you want to be like me, you're going to learn how to play jazz. And I said, jazz sucks, but I want to be a ninja. Right? And he's like, you're going to get the book Modern Jazz Independence by Ron Spagliardi, and we're going to get through the whole thing. And you're going to be very bored at times, but you're going to go through that. And by the end of that book, this is what you'll be able to do. And he played some stuff, that I was just like, yes, that's what, teach me that. Show me that. Show me that. And it lit me up, And that's the way I try to get them involved. Like, I'll actually play some really mind-blowing things in that first meeting and say, things like this I've gotten from this, things like this I've gotten from this. And so I open them up to where I'm like, wherever you want to go is cool with me. I can help you get there. Let's figure that out. That's a good way to get them to practice, is to revisit that discussion.
Inspiration.
Yeah.
Completely.
That's
inspiration,
the key, right? Being able to see someone who's ahead of you further down the path, and that's where you want to go.
Inspiration without discouragement.
Right.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
That's
Very
without
well
discouragement.
said.
Yep.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
Bart,
What about you, Bart?
Well, I'm going to echo everything that you guys said, and my 2 cents would be on it. On a couple of things that you guys touched on is pretty much the same thing. I ask everybody. The first thing I say is, well, what? Who is the drummer that inspired you? What inspired you to want to play drums and to play music, more importantly? And they'll answer the question. And like all of you guys said, keep that in mind. Listen to what the student has to say. It could be that, they saw Metallica and they wanted to be Lars, or it could be that they saw, I was watching some, old footage of, Gene Krupa play, and I just had to do that. Whatever it is, listen to what they say. And build them into what they want to be. Help guide them down the path. I can't make them play drums. I lead the student to the door, and it's up to them to open the door and go through it. I can help them get there, but I can't make them, become
I,
the
I
person
agree.
they want
One of my teachers used to tell me that too. He's like, I can only shine the light. You've got
Right, exactly. So I kind of have my approach to it is is a three-part approach. I tell people after I get to know them in their first lesson, I always tell them, look, the stuff that's going to make you a great drummer, the thing about practice is this: practicing is awful. Nobody wants to practice because when you first start practicing, you can't do it. You're playing something you cannot do. And so it's real frustrating. So what I tell them is that you need to understand that going into it. So when you walk out of drum lessons with me, the way I look at it is this. It needs to be, you need to walk out of the lesson kind of feeling like, well, I got this information, but I can't do it just yet. In the drum lesson, I was able to get through it one time, just barely, but man, I just can't do it. I cannot do it. And I've got to go home and practice. Well, how do you get them to practice? Well, what I do is they're feeling a little bit beat up. They can barely play this thing, but that's where the fun creeps in, where at the end of the lesson, I'm like, look, you were able to do this one time, okay? And then the next week they come back and they can play it one or two times. And then I tell them, think backwards. This is our third lesson. 5 weeks ago, could you have done what you just did now? And they go, no, I couldn't have. Well, okay, you're getting better.
Point.
In very small increments, but you're getting better. Okay, now 8 weeks in. Okay, 4 months ago, 5 months ago, could you have done this? No way. I didn't even know what a quarter note was.
Think backwards. I'm writing that down.
Yeah. So now here's one that, do you guys happen to know who Jocko Willink is?
No.
Okay. Jocko Willink is actually
Does he play Paiste cymbals?
He does not. If he was a drummer, though, he'd play Sabian cymbals.
Oh!
Oh!
I love.
That's a topic for another round.
Yeah, that's right.
Jeremy said that's
Anyway. I'm sorry. I had to throw that out there. So, Jocko Willink is a retired Navy SEAL, and he had an amazing career as a Navy SEAL. He has a podcast now, and he's a motivational speaker.
I think I know that guy. He gets up at like 4 a.m. and posts a picture of his Rolex to tell everybody what time it is.
I don't think that's him.
No? Him and Joe Rogan are friends.
Could be. I don't know. It could. It could be. But this is something that I tell people too, and I think this is really important. This is you're going to bear with me because I got to read this. It's this is a quote by Jocko Willink from one of his books, and it says, and it's on motivation. And I'm really clear with students about this because I think motivation is important, but it'll only go so far. And that's because of this. Jocko Willink wrote in his book, he said, don't worry about motivation. Motivation is fickle. It comes and it goes. It is unreliable. When you are counting on motivation to get you through your goals and accomplish, most likely it will fall short. So don't expect to be motivated every day to get out there and make things happen. You won't be. Don't count on motivation. Count on discipline. You know what you have to do to make it happen. So make it happen. You do it. You become the discipline. Everyone wants some magic pill, some life hack that eliminates the need to do the work, but that does not exist. No, you have to do the work. You have to hold the line. You have to make it happen. So dig in, find the discipline, be the discipline, accomplish. So that right there to me is motivation. Now,
There it is.
that's going to go so far. I'm motivated now. I'm setting at my drums. I want to play. But when I sit down to try to play red barchetta, I can't do it. Now I'm frustrated. But if I practice red barchetta every day for a month, I may not have it perfect. I may not sound like Neil Peart. I may sound like Bart Robley trying to sound like Neil Peart. But I'm going to be better at the end of October at playing red barchetta because I found the discipline to practice it when I didn't want to. So that's my motivation, and that's what I try to push to all of my students.
Right on.
When you don't feel motivated, when it is hard to play paradiddles, when it is hard to play Red Barchetta or a Motley Crue song, when it is just impossible to do it, think about your discipline to get in there and do it, and let the fact that you couldn't do something 8 weeks ago be your motivation. So that's kind of one of the things that I try to push with all of my students. You know, I'm sorry to mean to take so much time with that, but
That's a
I
good
think
one, Bart.
I think it's important for the student to understand they have to be disciplined as well. But at the same time, at the very end of that, man, it's not just about being a motivational speaker and saying stuff like that. It is. Rick, you're right. Jeremy, Chip, you guys are all right. The lesson has to be fun. If the student's just walking away going, "Oh man, that was hard," they don't want to come back. But if you can
It's a
do all of
balance.
that, yeah, if you can do all of
Yeah.
that and find the balance to have fun, you're gonna be cooking with gas.
That's
There
right.
it is.
That's
Awesome.
a
I
balance
tell you what,
between-
I like
Go ahead.
I like to have my students, some of them just evolve at their own pace as well. And I have some adult students who are paying for their own lesson who don't practice. And they're good with that. They're like, hey, I don't have time to practice. I get an hour a week, and my hour is with you, Rick, at your studio. And I feel that if they're inspired and they're growing, I'm okay with it. Now, I always pepper in, you'd be that much better if you could squeeze in this much time. But I've accepted that with some of my students. So I've given them the green light. I'm like, okay, yeah, if you want to pay me to work in here that way, that's okay with me. Now, if it's a student, you know, a parent paying for a student, that's another story. You have to be
Right.
really, really honest with the parents and say, hey, I don't want to take your money if your kid isn't evolving.
Right.
Rick, that's a
So-
really excellent point you bring up. And I have a couple of adult students like that as well, who are like, you know, they just know their lives are too busy, but they want to hold on to this. It's important to them. They like hanging out with me and talking about drums and working on stuff for an hour a week.
Yeah.
And, you know, if that's how it's going to be, that's fine. And like you, I try to remind them, like, hey, if you made this progress in an hour, think how much progress you can make in 5 hours. But
I have.
There it is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
especially in that environment. But really, for me, the key, everything you guys are saying is totally right on, and a lot of it comes down to how you practice. I'm a big believer
Yeah.
in helping people figure out how to practice the most effectively to get the most bang for their buck out of the time they spend, because the time is so precious for me
Right.
too, right?
Mhm. Right.
For us too, it's all about efficiency, and that has to do with mostly with how fast you practice things, and you know, getting the ego out of it. You know, I think Bart, you were saying before about how frustrating it is, like when you don't sound good, right? And when your ego is so involved, you always want to sound good when you're playing, even when you're practicing, and it's frustrating when you don't. But practicing is not supposed to sound good,
Not
right?
at
Practicing
all. At all. It's not supposed to sound good at all. It's
That's
supposed to sound
right.
terrible.
If you're actually
Yeah.
learning something, you don't sound good when you're learning it. You sound good once you've learned it, right?
Yeah.
And so that's
Yes.
something to impress upon students right from the get-go. Is like, hey, it's a process. You've got to be down and invested in the process. The product will come, but you got to be believing in the process.
I heard
That's
Steve
right. Don't be
Smith-
afraid to make a mistake.
Right. I heard Steve Smith one time at a drum clinic, and he was talking about how he was in New York. He lives in New York, and he was practicing at the Drummers Collective, you know, and he was in there in a practice room, and he goes, "There's a lot." He goes, "It's hard because there's a lot of people out. They stand outside the room and listen to him practice." And he goes, "I have to shut that out because, you know, when you're practicing, you're not supposed to sound good." Steve Smith said, "I have a feeling Steve Smith's idea of sounding bad and my idea of sounding bad are two completely different things." But
Yeah,
you
but
know,
you're much more fun at a party, Bart.
I'm the guy with the lampshade on his head, right? I'll put a symbol on my head, right? But you know, Steve Smith gives that piece of advice. That's the thing that I think is important to remember. You know, Steve Smith, one of the greatest technique people ever, you know, is got to practice and sound bad. Then we all do. Jeremy, I have something for you, and I'm going to put you on the spot here about a thing that you sent out about the Wilcox book.
Wilcoxon? Uh-huh.
Wilcox. Okay. Now, I've been watching Steve Smith. That's what reminded me. Play through those solos. First of all, what's the name of the book? What's the name of the book, please?
Modern Rudimental Swing Solos for the Advanced Drummer.
Okay. I'm going to get that book because I've been watching Steve Smith play these things, and I'm very inspired by him. He's one of my favorite, technique drummers. Now, you said that you had a little thing that you do for certain drummers to, once they play through that, you give them something that you have done. And I think it's very cool. What is that?
This is brand new. I actually haven't yet done this, but I just had the inspiration to come up with it. So this is, I'm going to show you guys. Let's see if I can pull it up. 1 second.
Well, while you're looking for it, I want you to know that I'm going to buy that book and I'm going to take some lessons with you.
Oh, fantastic.
And I'm going to play through it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
What is that going to be? What is that going to be?
So this book, the advanced, the Charlie Wilcoxon book, he's got a couple of books. And this one is one that my teacher put me through when I was a teenager. Norman Grossman, great jazz drummer in New York City. He's deceased now, but a mentor for me, a really important guy in my life when I was a teenager. And he talk about vegetables, man. He made me eat all these vegetables that I hated at the time. And now I'm so grateful for all the vegetables he made me eat, right? Anyway, so it's this book that's very technical, super technical. It's all rudimental solos, sort of the basis of swing jazz drumming, the early stuff, Gene Krupa, Buddy Rich, Sid Catlett. And to get through the book is a pretty major achievement. It takes a long time. It's, at least a couple years worth of work for most people. And so I had this idea the other day, because I've only had a handful of students in my teaching career that have ever even gotten through to the end of the book, because it's a big undertaking. So I thought, you know what, that's such a big deal. I should acknowledge it with something, right? Other than great job. So I decided to come up with a little patch. I was gonna have these patches made. So I just ordered them actually yesterday. And now from now on, any student who completes the book is gonna get a patch, and I'm gonna send them out to my students in the past who've completed the book just so they have it just for fun. I just thought it was a nice way to sort of acknowledge, an achievement and all the time they put in. It's a small thing, but
Well, that's a big thing. And I'm telling you, you motivated me. It's just weird that those two worlds kind of came together, because you had mentioned it and I had been watching Steve Smith do these videos. And I'm telling you right now, I'm going to order the book today. I'm going to find it somewhere and order it. And I'm going to sign up with some lessons for it with you. I'm going to work on it. I'm going to get one of those patches. That is my motivation. I don't care if it takes me 2 years.
I love it.
Hey,
I'm going to get one of those patches.
You guys, this has been a great conversation for me. I want to thank you all for your time. Thank you, Bart, Rick, Jeremy. I've got to get going right now. I'm sorry, but I've got to leave. Are there any final words on how to get students to practice? Rick?
Rick.
Leave your sticks handy. Tell every student, have your drum pad on your coffee table with your sticks right there. So just anything in your daily routine that's going to help you, just pick up those sticks. If the drum kit's in the other room, it's going to take effort to get to the other room. So just make it convenient. Put drumsticks all over the house.
Good tip.
You'll pick them up, you'll play, and you'll get better.
Jeremy, what's your tip?
I guess I would say don't get discouraged. There's going to be good days and bad days, good weeks and bad weeks, even long stretches. You may not play drums for 6 months. That doesn't mean you need to give up. Doesn't mean you're a failure. You can always come back. It's ready for you whenever you got the time.
I'm gonna throw in one thing and I'm gonna say something to echo what Rick said. I have a student that is an adult student and he's an iron worker, right? This guy and he has 2 kids. He doesn't have a lot of time to practice, so he likes to practice on his drum break. So I told him, I said, the bottom of your shoe, the steering wheel in your truck, a practice pad in your truck, 30, 45 minutes on your lunch break, sit there and run paradiddles, ratomacues, flams, whatever. 10 minutes, man. You can get a lot of work done in 10 minutes. Chip, what's your quick tip for signing off?
I'm just going to echo exactly what Rick Stojak said. There's a guy named David Allen that wrote a book and has a process called Getting Things Done, which makes your time more efficient, the return on your investment in time more efficient in life itself. And one of the things he says is dress for the part. Leave your workout clothes by the end of the bed. When you get up, you're looking at your workout clothes. You're much more likely to go put those clothes on and go for a walk than if you don't see them. So I'm going to go with Rick Stojak and double down with the drumsticks around the house.
Yeah.
Bammo.
Woo!
Awesome.
Whoa.
Very cool.
Thank you,
All right.
guys.
Oh, there. Hey, look,
Thanks.
Jeremy, do that again. Let's all do our Chip Ritters. Come on, everybody do a Chip Ritter.
Do the garden weasel, yo.
Here's my Chip Ritter. Yeah, I caught it. Got it. All right.
You
You see
guys
that?
are the best.
See
Thanks,
you
everybody.
Thank you
guys.
so much for watching Drummers Education Network, and we'll be back. And again, stay tuned for content. If you like it, please hit the bell notification and subscribe to our channel. If you're just watching this in our group, thanks for being a member. Please comment and let us know your thoughts.